Hey everybody, I'm Sean Robinson.
I'm Brandon Graham.
Welcome to the Living the Line. We're trying something a little bit new today. Brandon, how you been?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. So one of the new things we're trying is it's just me and Brandon, which is not that surprising from a personal basis because we get to talk on the phone all the time, right?
Certainly.
And text obnoxious things to each other.
Yeah, I think the hope for this is to give Carson time to more drawing time in his life.
Right. Carson is working on hopefully finishing Bound this summer. Did I just say that out loud? Carson is working on a graphic novel called Bound and definitely needs more drawing time this summer. And frankly, it's fun to do something a little bit different. And one of the different things we're going to try to do is to keep this to um, a bite-sized morsel. So rather than going on to a 3-hour philosophical diatribe about a single panel of Appleseed, we thought we would sort of adopt a little show and tell format here. And today, I'm going to do a little bit of showing and telling. And Brandon, I think you have some things to show as well, so we're not going to be totally leaving you out.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I'm excited to talk about this because we're talking about is this 60s samurai manga we're getting into today?
Well, we're going to talk about Sanpei Shirato is one of the I think one of the greatest cartoonists in cartooning history, and is very woefully unrepresented in English until this year, because one of his classic manga series, Kamui Den, is going to be coming out from um, Drawn and Quarterly, and it's been interesting. I've been following, I've been a big fan of Shirato's for a long time, and two key series of his that I've just been waiting for somebody to crack in the English language market for friggin' forever are the two samurai manga that he did in the late 50s and all through the 60s. So Kamui Den is the one that he started in, I believe it was 1963. It was the first publication in Garo. It was essentially like the flagship Garo title. But he did another samurai manga before that that was incredibly popular as well, and it had a lot of the same kinds of themes. Took place in a different era, but had a lot of the same themes and characters and things along those lines. And that's called, I'm going to butcher the name, I apologize, Ninja Bujeicho, something like that. Ninja Bujeicho, which is basically means like ninja training manual.
Nice.
And so, yeah,
Because I assume for the English version they're going to keep the Japanese title because I love the idea of just seeing a book that's called Ninja Training Manual.
I
Good.
mean,
I'm
I think, yeah, I think it's pretty rad, and it's easier to pronounce that way. But yeah, that is actually, as far as I know, not licensed and not coming out in English yet. But yeah, so Brandon, I sent you copies of basically those entire series, both of those series, right?
Yeah, so I have this box of these, this giant box of these little guys I'm slowly going through, and I've been doing a fun thing, and the thing we should post and show at some point is I've just been going through these books and just sketching out the panels that I enjoy from them.
So when you say you're enjoying them, what kind of things are attracting you to those particular panels?
Well, they're really they're really designy in a nice way. Um, like you can tell, something I was interested in asking you about his work is how because Garo is generally thought of as like the raw magazine of Japan almost. It's like it's very, people hold it up as like this idealized weird indie comic, but his work seems pretty straightforward, blood and guts samurai stuff. So I'm interested in how it fits into Garo, or is it just like let's have a pretty standard, um, like I don't know what post Tezuka more edgy samurai comic, and then put it in Garo as like is it the flagship because they knew it was quality?
Yeah, well, I mean, he was one of the two founders of the magazine, but yeah, as the flagship because he was a known quantity. He was incredibly popular, and the story as well. It's not just the sort of aesthetics of the cartooning and everything, but he, um, you know, uh, the sort of general argument. I don't know how this bears out over time, but the sort of general argument is that he was essentially like using the peasant struggles of earlier times to comment on capitalism and comment on the accumulation of wealth among different classes and the ways that sort of classes interact with each other. So, he had a sort of like broad political edge that was married to this really, really wild storytelling. He's just totally fearless. And you're going to see some of that in Ninja Bujeicho. Oh, did I say we're going to see Ninja Bujeicho? Because we are.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
but you see some of that in Ninja Bujeicho, but then like in Kamui, he really just like lets it fly. I think he kind of, knew what he was getting into that time. He did Ninja Bujeicho, as far as I know, for the rental market, and didn't know that it was going to be a success, and so you can kind of hedge your bets or not really, see what's going to happen, right? Um,
Right.
and in a lot of ways, it's the rawer, wilder work. I mean, I'm sure you can see the difference between the two books, but it's just a kind of an open secret that he actually didn't even draw. He would lay out Kamui,
Okay.
but Kamui, the '60s series, is actually drawn by Goseki Kojima, the guy who drew Lone Wolf and Cub. Um, so he drew Ninja Bujeicho, and he got so popular that he was able to get this other, up and coming artist to work over his own layouts.
Oh, that's
Um, yeah, so Kojima can draw like an animal, and he's just absolutely just incredible illustrator. But they're all over, his layouts. And like you said, it's like a kind of like a Tezuka, like on, uh, I don't even know, mescaline or something.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah, much because there. I know there's the Lone Wolf and Cub. If I remember right, it was kind of part of its own movement in Japan. That was kind of a movement towards a little bit more realism in
right.
this for them spacing. But
Gekiga.
yeah, it's interesting from the American point of view because we got Lone Wolf and Cub over here, and it was such a huge influence on especially people like Frank Miller. And you had the Frank Miller covers kind of pushing forward. But I feel like a book like Frank Miller's Ronin is very much just him finding Mobius and Lone Wolf and Cub at the same time and trying to process it in a comic. Um, and I think Kamui came out over here in the '80s as well. It was just
Sort of, yeah. That's an extension of the original series. It's like Kamui short stories, Gaiden, like a side quest or something. And that was actually drawn primarily by Sanpei Shirato's brother,
okay.
believe it or not. Once again, totally uncredited, other than in some of the serialization. I think that they credited these people sometimes, and also, that one in particular is credited to the studio. But his brother was almost solely responsible for that art.
Okay, because it
Uh,
does feel like halfway between Lone Wolf and Cub and his work. So
right. It's quite wild, yeah. So
yeah,
it's sort of a backwards influence because since Kojima was the primary artist on the thing that was the huge, tremendous breakout success for Shirato. I think that there's a certain amount of chasing the success in a certain way. Like he
sure.
ends up being influential after the fact. I have to say though, it's not like he just drew it. I mean, he was getting layouts as far as we know. He was working from roughs. And if you see his stuff both before and slightly after that, he was actually fairly stiff. Kojima was,
Yeah.
was I think comparatively stiff, whereas you never really get that with the stuff that's put out under Shirato's name. So this is what the entire Ninja Bujeicho looks like if you got the big old box
Oh,
here.
nice.
This was in great condition until it was opened by authorities who were looking for drugs or something. They
Oh,
just
what kind of
ripped.
drugs were in with the comic?
Exactly
What's
right.
the drug pairing you would do with this manga?
Because they just ripped it right open and then put a
Uh,
little sticker on it that said, "By the way, we opened your package."
huh.
Um, and they were published in these oversized, I mean oversized for Japan, hardback editions. It's like a 4,000 page story in two books, uh, or 3,000 pages or whatever. It's just absolutely beautiful, and it's done in this really really thin paper, like it's like Bible editions,
Oh,
with really really good binding and good reproduction and larger imagery and everything like that. Um, and that was done, I believe, during the run of Kamui. And later, they actually collected uh, the first run of Kamui, the Garo, in similar box sets. So this is 4 volumes,
Right.
uh, right here. So Brandon, we were talking about this guy for a while. We've both been looking at his stuff in different forums and everything, and I could not believe I knew this existed, but I wanted to show it to you because it's such a wild thing. So let's take a look.
Certainly.
So uh, Ninja Bujeicho was actually filmed as a movie for Japanese cinema in the mid '60s. So this is, half a decade or more after the comic originally came out. And as you can see, they shot the entire thing from the original art. Um, so somebody has kindly subtitled this, but for me, the real novel thing is the fact that since it was shot from his original art, you can actually see, construction lines, and they're doing close-ups of everything. I just paused it right here so you can actually see. So we've got like this, for instance, this construction line right here, unerased pencil right here. Same thing with her mouth line. You can see he's just inked right over that.
Yeah, I feel like this was probably not an artist idea because it's like, let's zoom in close and see exactly how messy your lines are. And
Yeah, look at this. Like these broad, strokes right here. They've processed the film in a way, to try to keep the blacks relatively like shorn up, but however they've done it, the processed it has exaggerated all the pencil, which, like you said, would be fairly irritating if you're the artist. But for like me, I mean, this is just absolutely wonderful thing. The other processing they've done here, you can see this kind of scribbly hatch mark on parts of you see like on their shoulders and things like that.
yeah,
That the tone was not directly applied to the page. Uh, so all the toning that was done in this series, like look at the back sides of all the horses here, was done with, I believe it's blue. I haven't actually seen any of the original art in color, but I believe blue indications on the art so that the mechanical tone could be applied at the printers, basically.
right. Because the print versions of these have pretty heavy, they wrecked the binding on this one, have pretty heavy screen tone on them.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Why,
And
so I'm interested in why the pencils aren't being more picked up by the printer. Is it just the kind of worse printing technology or different printing technology than we have now?
well, so the blue, like it would have been done in blue, I believe for the tone indications, they would use a filter on the camera. Um, so they had it's the same principles that were used for black and white photography. Like Orson Welles wouldn't just shoot like a sky to get some clouds; he'd
Sure.
use a red filter, which would exaggerate the contrast by dropping out all of the red or only using the red. So you have different types of filters that you can use on the camera.
Okay,
So
so we're getting a black and white version of blue pencils, basically, you're saying.
exactly right. And then also because of the contrast uh, hype that they're doing, imprecise contrast hype, we're also getting that unerased pencil area as well. So some of that gray is probably unerased pencil. Some of it is probably the tone indications.
And we're seeing the vertical lines going through the panels.
Yeah.
I wonder if those are pre. It's just making me think of, you ever see old Marvel paper where they have
Yeah.
the printed out the blue line of where the panels are?
I'm pretty sure that that's what's going on. Yeah. As a
Yeah.
time saving device, he's got this on his board printed out in advance. Although you can see like that right there. Look at all these, rough pencil indications. Yeah. Can you imagine being the person who drew that teeny tiny little face and seeing it projected on a movie screen?
Totally. It's something that you can really tell in these is the confidence of his line. Like it a lot of it looks like he's figuring out the drawings in ink.
Yeah. Well, I
Uh,
mean, and we can see some of the indications. He's barely erased. It's like, he's got, okay, that's where the mouth belongs.
it's
Look at that
almost
right
like,
there.
yeah, it feels like almost, well, there's a Monben video with the guy that drew Golgo 13.
Right.
And if I remember right, he doesn't pencil faces. He just does all the faces directly in ink, so he can
Right.
capture the spontaneity.
Yeah,
Um,
and you can see that sort of mentality at work definitely in Shirato stuff. I have to say, as somebody who is a huge fan of this era of his things, it's actually just absolutely wild to me that he wouldn't be the finisher on all of his comics going forward after this. That
I
this is
imagine
a
just because he's such a golden goose of ideas, that having there's such a demand for output in manga that if you can have a studio of guys and other artists coming in and doing the work while you're doing all the thinking work, it's probably uh, more financially beneficial to everyone.
right. No, I'm sure you're correct. I mean, I'm sure that that was a big part of it. I told my friend Tom Kaczynski, Uncivilized Books. I told him a little bit about this particular story, and he was saying too, like, man, like, not everybody's dream is to be chained to a drawing table.
I mean, it sounds like he kind of was, but maybe not in the way of like a Tizu. Because it's interesting, because in American comics, we basically have the inking system. Uh,
Right.
was what our assembly line was, and in manga they seem to actually be like, let's just get a bunch of guys in here drawing backgrounds, and this also looks to me like an art style that I guess if you train people, like everything looks like it's his line in these.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
there's not a clear delineation between like, oh, this is where a secondary artist is coming and draws stuff.
Right.
I mean, it's
Yeah. No.
almost loose enough to feel like it's almost like he's inking layouts.
Right. Yeah, no, that is definitely the impression you get from the entirety of the book, and those smaller editions I think don't quite communicate that quite as well either. Um, Obviously, we're getting as large an edition as you could possibly get right here, in terms of the amount of close up and everything like that. But yeah, I mean, especially like he has certain characters there, like every time that he appears, this guy has that same hair, that same wild
Oh
sweep
yeah.
of hair,
There's
Um,
a we might it might be hard to find at this point, but there's a tiny little thing I noticed where it looked like an eraser had caught a little. There's a little on this page. You can see it's color. You can see the ink is looks like it.
right.
That's just the pencil, but you can tell it all looks like it's being done incredibly quickly to me, and it's impressive. Just in that, like it looks like they're like, we have stories to tell. Let's bang them out as quick as possible. And I assume this is a brush he's doing this stuff with, or
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure this is like a squared nib. So
tip pen. So what are you thinking?
yeah, here look at that right there. So I mean,
Oh, I see.
look at these kind of like pointy lines on where you would expect the release to be,
Yeah.
and especially the digging in on the side of the face there too.
Do you think the hair is being done with the same pen?
That's a really good question. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
Because
I
that
don't
looks a
know.
little brushier, and then
Right.
it looks like it. Do you think a technical pen on his face?
No, 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 not a technical pen, but like what you would call in English like a school nib,
Okay,
where the edge is not as sharp and fine, but it's still got some amount of edge. They call them school nibs because you could write it with them at school, and not expect people to accidentally stab themselves.
sure.
Uh, so it's got flexibility and everything, but it's not ripping the paper,
Yeah,
Um, yeah, I mean that's my guess anyway, just based on the sort of character of the mark and stuff. I mean, really scraping at it there. It's like,
yeah. I
uh,
wonder how thick the paper he's using on this part, because it does look like the mad dash drawing style makes it feel like, I'm erasing pages on pretty thick Bristol every once in a while, and it'll crumple if you hit the corner in the wrong way.
right,
And this stuff just looks like there was like fire lit under the guy.
right. Yeah, I can only imagine trying to overhaul this into a new style with a new primary artist, and you know, it, it, like I said, this is all the prior series, I'd recommend, if you're interested in, you just watch this. But the series that's coming out from Drawn and Quarterly, Kamui is going to be done. Is the second series that we were talking about. So completely different finish style, and I would say more realism to the figures, but the same level of like vivacity in terms of like the energetic layouts and movement across the page and everything.
Certainly. Yeah, I wonder if we can include the link to that video you just posted under this one so people can see how
Oh yeah,
um, what a bizarre thing it is. Like that would be a fascinating thing to be done with an American comic. Like let's zoom all the way in on Jack Kirby's stuff and talk about it.
well, so you're saying you're not ready for a multiple warheads original art action comic
I
or
mean,
action movie?
I imagine I would probably feel about how I felt looking at this, um, where you're like, oh no, that's pretty messy when you get that close. But he doesn't have an illusion of trying to keep it that clean too. Where like a
Right.
lot of certainly with my style, I'm like trying to capture some of that like clear line Hergé stuff in there. So it's almost like I'm trying to pretend it's a little cleaner than it is, and then you get close and you can see the wizard behind the
Right.
sheet or whatever.
Well, how did you feel when you saw those Moonray posters that were 2 foot by 3 foot?
Oh yeah, well those were fine. I mean, normally I draw stuff, especially covers. You draw it with the idea of like this might blow up. I think
Sure.
that the weirder thing is, in comics, there's a certain element of like of not every drawing is going to be your best drawing because the story is more important than the comic, and you'll
Right.
sometimes waste a lot of time if you're trying to be an illustrator on every page, not a cartoonist. And I think that would be the scary thing is blowing up just a panel where you're like, I need to figure out what it looks like when this character brushes their teeth, and it doesn't have to be the best drawing, but it wants to convey this information, and then blow that up as a poster, and you're like, oh no, that is not a good hand.
Yeah, right. And you have to think he's at the mercy of the director. I mean, there's a credited director there. That's the other crazy thing to me.
Yeah,
It's like, what did this guy do?
yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I don't know. This is an odd video. I apologize in advance if this wasn't entertaining to you, but it was certainly entertaining to me. And I think I'm gonna go watch the entire movie. How about you?
Yeah, yeah. That's my plan for the rest of my day.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Brandon.
Yeah, thanks,
Thanks,
Sean.
guys, for watching.
Back to the land, let's get away. Just